There are days that split your life into before and after. Most people expect that day to come with sirens, screams, some kind of loud, cinematic chaos. Mine arrived with silence. It was a Tuesday, early morning. The sun hadn't even cleared the buildings yet, but my office on the 40th floor of the Morrison and Reed Tower was already flooded with amber light. I stood motionless, staring out at the Potomac River. I used to love that view, the glassy surface, the distant movement of boats cutting quietly through the water. It reminded me of why I worked 60-hour weeks, why I missed birthdays and vacations, why I sacrificed so much. But that morning, the view didn't move me. I was gripping the edge of the desk, trying not to double over from the pain in my side. A persistent, pulsing ache. Dull some days, sharp on others, but always there now. Lately, even climbing stairs left me breathless. My suits fit looser. The once invisible signs had gathered into a chorus I couldn't ignore anymore. Then my phone buzzed. It was my assistant. "Mr. Callahan, your wife is here." I didn't even have time to answer before Lindsay walked in. Always perfect. Always composed. Hair pinned just so. Makeup untouched by the July heat. Tailored blazer cinched tight around a body that had been sculpted in a yoga studio she visited more religiously than church. Her heels clicked across the floor as she walked toward me. Not with urgency, but efficiency. "Ready?" she asked, already glancing down at her phone. Her fingers were dancing over the screen before I could answer. I closed the spreadsheet on my monitor, pretending I was fine. Pretending I didn't feel like I was unraveling from the inside out. "Let me grab my coat," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The drive to the hospital was silent, except for the soft, insistent tapping of her acrylic nails on her phone screen. She was answering emails, texting clients, rearranging schedules. She didn't look at me once, not even at the red lights, and I didn't ask her to. After 10 years together, I'd learned to decode her silences. This one meant she was trying to stay ahead of whatever we were about to hear. But deep down, I felt something twist in my chest. Not fear of the illness. Fear of her indifference. At Georgetown Medical Center, we were ushered into a large, sterile office with pale walls and framed medical degrees that did little to soften the news waiting for us. Dr. Julius Mann looked like the kind of man who knew exactly how many lives he'd ruined before lunch. Calm, serious, unblinking. He folded his hands, glanced at the manila folder on the desk, like he needed it to remind him what he was about to say, then met my eyes. "We've reviewed your scans and lab results, Mr. Callahan. The mass in your abdomen is malignant. It's testicular cancer. Stage 3. The words slammed into me like a blunt object. My breath left my lungs all at once. The silence in the room turned thick, suffocating. My wife didn't cry. She didn't gasp. She reached across and grabbed my hand. Yes, but not in shock, not in fear. It was a performance. Her other hand still clutched her phone, thumb hovering, ready to resume typing at any moment. "We'll need to start treatment immediately," Dr. Mann continued. "Unfortunately, the cancer has spread. Waiting even a few weeks could reduce your chances dramatically." "What about sperm banking?" Lindsay asked immediately, her voice sharp and clean, as if this was just another negotiation. "We've gone through 6 rounds of IVF. You know how important this is. We need options." Dr. Mann hesitated, his expression softening. "I understand, but we simply don't have the time. Fertility preservation procedures would delay treatment too long." "I'm sorry." She blinked. No tears, just calculations. "I'll need your office to send over insurance codes and authorizations," she said briskly. "And your email. I'll set up a shared calendar with appointments and medication schedules. I'll coordinate with our fertility specialist and the insurance carrier. Do you have a HIPAA-secure inbox?" I was still staring at the floor when I heard my name. "Ethan?" she asked. "You okay?" I looked up at her and nodded, but something inside me had shifted, something subtle and terrifying. She wasn't scared. She wasn't broken. She was planning. The chemotherapy ward smelled like lemon-scented antiseptic and quiet despair. No matter how many windows they installed, No matter how many pastel walls or inspirational quotes they printed in calligraphy font, the truth bled through. This was a place where people came to lose things. Hair, hope, dignity, sometimes their lives. By week 3 of treatment, I had already lost 10 pounds and most of my energy. I'd also lost the illusion that I had control over anything anymore. But I still hadn't lost my ability to observe. And that, as it turned out, would save me. I was seated in the corner recliner, the one closest to the big window overlooking a tiny, meticulously groomed garden. Vince, the oncology social worker, had reserved it for me. Said I looked like someone who liked a good view. I used to. I wasn't so sure anymore. Lindsay had accompanied me to my first 2 treatments. Today, she only stayed long enough to make sure the nurse knew my chart. "I've got a client call," she said, slipping on her sunglasses like she was heading to lunch, not walking away from her husband's poison drip. "But Maddie should be here soon." Maddie. I didn't know much about her, except that she was younger than most of the nurses, wore cheerful patterned scrubs, and spoke in that soft, unnerving tone that people use when they think you're dying but don't want to say it out loud. "Hey, Ethan," she said warmly, walking in with a tray of supplies. "How's the nausea today?" "Tolerable," I said. "The anticipation is worse than the actual drip." She nodded, already checking my 4-port. "You've been doing great, honestly. Better than most." "Is that the official medical term? Better than most?" She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. There was something tight in her posture, hesitant, like she was holding something back. Vince passed by, giving me a thumbs up. "Support group starts in 20. Still a standing invitation." "Maybe next time," I said, though we both knew that meant never. But Maddie turned to me just as he walked off. "You know," she said, "some patients say those meetings help more than the meds. Being around people who get it, who've lived it." I didn't answer. I was too distracted by what I saw on her phone. She had set it down while adjusting my saline line. A message notification lit up her screen, and I caught the name. Lindsay Callahan. The preview showed just one sentence. "Can you confirm the full sterility timeline again for the fertility specialist?" I froze. Maddie quickly tapped the screen off and looked up. Too late. She must have seen my expression because her own face flushed. She's just being thorough. Wives often have questions." "Sure," I said slowly, my voice suddenly distant to my own ears. "Of course." But something inside me had just shifted. Again. I lay back in the recliner, eyes on the 4-bag above me, counting the slow drip of chemicals sliding into my veins. Not because I was thinking about cancer, but because I was suddenly thinking about how hard Lindsay had pushed for sperm preservation. About how crushed she claimed to be when the doctor said there was no time. And yet here she was, weeks into my chemo, still collecting proof of sterility. Why? For closure? Or for documentation? By the time the session ended, Maddie was gone, replaced by another nurse who barely looked at me. I sat in the chair 10 minutes longer than I needed to. Not because I was too weak to move, but because I wasn't sure what I was going home to anymore. That night, I lay awake beside Lindsay, pretending to sleep while she typed on her phone with the screen turned away from me. I listened to every tap of her fingers, every shift of her breath. She laughed softly at one point, just once, then turned on her side, back facing me, and silenced her phone. I didn't sleep at all. And in the morning, something in me changed. I started paying attention. You never expect the betrayal to be so boring at first. There's no dramatic reveal, no lipstick on a collar, no anonymous text from a stranger. Comes in fragments, pauses in conversation, strange emails you weren't CC'd on, glances that last too long. By the time I realized something was wrong, I had already ignored 100 little signs that whispered, "Wake up." After 6 weeks of treatment, I returned to Morrison and Reed. Not to my corner office. That had been temporarily reassigned while I was gone. No, I was tucked into a cramped, windowless side room next to the copy machine. The same copy machine I used to joke about replacing with a sculpture because it made more noise than it was worth. I didn't say anything. Not then. I was still pretending this was a normal comeback. Just until the reorg is complete, Les Moyer, the CEO, told me with a too bright smile. Caesar's done a great job holding down the fort while you were gone. You'll have your clients back in no time. I nodded, but something caught in my throat when he said Caesar's name. That same Caesar who had been at our house within hours of my diagnosis. Who had stepped into my kitchen like he belonged there. Who had put a hand on Lindsay's back when he said goodbye, fingers a little too comfortable on her waist. Back then, I told myself I was imagining things. Now, I wasn't so sure. The next day, I got an email from Human Resources. Not directly, not to my inbox. Sonia Glover, our new HR director, caught me in the hallway. Mr. Callahan, I wanted to check how you're adjusting. If there's anything you need, she said, her tone professional but searching. You've had a lot of changes. I'm fine, I replied, just catching up. But she lingered. Some changes, she said slowly, should follow official channels. If you ever feel excluded from communications that affect your department, I'd like to know. It was a strange thing to say, almost like an invitation. That night I came home early. Lindsay wasn't there. She texted an hour later. Late meeting at Wellington. Don't wait up. So I didn't. I opened her laptop. We had always shared accounts. Nothing secret. No passwords hidden. She once told me she liked that. Real couples don't need to hide things. I wasn't looking for anything specific. Just a feeling. What I found were receipts. Dozens of them. Emails confirming a luxury villa booking in Santorini. First-class flights billed to Caesar's corporate card. Dinner reservations for two. A shared Google Calendar labeled Client Strategy Greece. Only there was no real client. I checked. Caesar had created a fake portfolio for a fictional Greek shipping partner. He'd even gone so far as to list non-existent market data in the monthly report, buried in pages of noise. But what chilled me wasn't just the deception, it was the dates. The exact week Lindsay had attended a client conference in Athens. The exact week she told me she was finding herself at a yoga retreat with two friends. The same two friends who, according to their Instagram feeds, had never left DC. The house was dark when she finally walked in. I was sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, the receipts highlighted on the screen. She didn't even pretend to act surprised. I can explain, she said quietly. But she didn't, because before she could say anything else, Flora walked in. My sister. Smart, tactical, relentless, and she wasn't smiling. I've already pulled the metadata, she said, dropping a flash drive on the table. Your conference photos were posted from Santorini, not Athens. Your fertility clinic messages were accessed from the same IP Caesar used to log into our client database. Lindsay turned pale. You hacked me? No, Flora replied evenly. You used shared devices, shared accounts. We didn't need to hack anything. We just followed your breadcrumbs. Lindsay sat down, her composure cracking in real time. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. You used my cancer, I said, my voice low, deadly quiet, to build a paper trail that proved I couldn't father children, while you were planning to pass off someone else's as mine. Silence. She looked at me, and for the first time in our marriage, I saw her mask completely fall. Not grief, not regret, just calculation. How much do you know? Enough, I said, but not everything, not yet. She stood up slowly. You won't ruin me for this. No, I replied. You did that yourself. The gala was flawless. Crystal chandeliers suspended from the ceiling of the Morrison and Reed event space reflected the city skyline. Champagne flowed freely. Everyone who mattered in D.C. Finance was in that room. Board members, investors, politicians, CEOs, laughing beneath lights as if empires never fall. But they do. And tonight I would make sure everyone remembered how. I stood by the far wall, not speaking, just watching. The theme of the evening was resilience. A cause close to the company's heart after their senior partner, cancer survivor and comeback story, had returned. That's how they branded me now. A symbol, a survivor, Press-friendly redemption arc. They didn't know what I was about to become. The man who turned their carefully constructed illusion inside out. Lindsay floated through the crowd like a socialite sculpted from marble and ambition. Her gown was black and elegant, her makeup immaculate. She laughed easily, touched arms casually, accepted compliments like someone about to make her grand move. And then she did. Right on cue. She moved to the bar, ordered sparkling water and pressed one hand, casually yet deliberately, to her stomach. The moment was choreographed, practiced. Rita Parsons noticed first. "You're not drinking?" she asked, one eyebrow raised. Lindsay smiled, demure. "Actually, I wanted you to be among the first to know." I saw Rita's fingers pause on her wine glass. Lindsay leaned closer. "It's early, but it's a miracle." She looked down, her hand lingering on her stomach. "After everything, the IVF, the cancer, I guess life finds a way." For a moment, no one said anything. Then Rita smiled. Not a warm smile, a dangerous one. "Yes," she said softly. "It always does. Although, the medical records were very clear about Ethan's sterility." Lindsay's expression twitched. "Sometimes doctors are wrong." "No," Rita replied, sipping her wine. "But forensic accountants rarely are." That's when the music cut. The lights dimmed slightly. The projector screen behind the podium lit up. And on it, my sister Flora. She stood beside a laptop, adjusting cables. Her voice steady over the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to take a brief intermission from speeches to share a short presentation. This pertains to ongoing matters of transparency and ethical conduct within Morrison and Reed." Lindsay's face went pale. Caesar froze mid-conversation across the room. Les Moyer, our CEO, stepped toward the stage, his expression unreadable. Behind Flora, Alfredo appeared, calm as ever, loading the files. Spreadsheets, booking records, metadata, fertility clinic messages. Side-by-side comparisons of Lindsay's Instagram photos and their real-time locations, pulled from embedded GPS tags. Caesar's travel expenses. The fake Greek client. The luxury villa he claimed was for relationship building. It was all there. All of it. Then came the email chain. Lindsay, posing as a concerned wife, requesting repeated updates on the exact timeline of my sterility from Maddie Burke. Maddie, unaware, providing protected medical data under the illusion of marital trust. The audience was silent, until Les Moyer stepped to the microphone. "Effective immediately," he said, voice like iron. "Mr. Lucas is suspended pending formal investigation into financial misconduct and fraud. Mrs. Callahan, please accompany our legal counsel." Security appeared without theatrics. No shouting, just controlled, practiced removal. Lindsay turned to me one last time. Her eyes weren't pleading. They were calculating. But for once, there was nothing left to calculate. "You planned this," she whispered. I leaned closer. "No, you did." They escorted her out. And just like that, the empire she tried to build on my back came crashing down. 6 months later, Morrison and Reed was now Morrison, Reed and Callahan. My name on the door. My office, the real one, restored. The view of the Potomac clearer than ever. Caesar had been indicted for embezzlement. Lindsay lost her license, her job, and her professional credibility. The pregnancy was real, but brief. A miscarriage. One final chapter in a story that never belonged to her. I didn't hate her. I just didn't care anymore. Rita handled the divorce like a demolition expert. Everything Lindsay thought she could hold on to, property, investments, even her name, gone. I gave her nothing but what the law required. And even that felt generous. 1 year later, the woman sitting next to me on the terrace didn't ask for anything I couldn't give. Her name was Paige. We met in the cancer survivor group of all places. She was a pediatric oncology nurse who had lost her husband 3 years before. She knew grief. She knew the slow crawl back from pain. She never pitied me. She just saw me. We didn't fall in love quickly. We built it. Slowly. Quietly. Like people who had both been broken once and weren't willing to shatter again. We married the following spring. 2 years later, we adopted twins, a boy and a girl, and for the first time since all of it, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. Flora and Alfredo now run a cybersecurity firm. They still laugh about how a fertility metadata case launched their company. Sonia was promoted to head of compliance and ethics at Morrison & Reed. The Dixon Protocols, a new standard for transparency and data ethics, are taught at business schools now. Rita, she's a legend. She married a Georgetown ethics professor. Together, they started a foundation that fights for patients and whistleblowers. Sometimes we still talk about the gala, the night the truth walked in wearing a suit and a flash drive. Sometimes justice is loud. And sometimes it arrives in the quiet devastation of someone realizing the game is over. But I didn't just survive what happened. I rebuilt. And when I look at my life now, my family, my name on the door, my children's laughter echoing through our home, I know one thing for certain. She used my cancer to destroy me, but in the end it healed me. And the truth? It was never hers to control.